Dick Van Dyke, a name synonymous with joy, laughter, and charm, has captivated audiences for over 7 decades. From his unforgettable role in The Dick Van Dyke Show to his performance as Bert in Mary Poppins, Van Dyke became a beloved figure, not just for his skillful performances, but for the warmth and light he radiated. His smile became synonymous with comfort, offering audiences a sense of safety and happiness in a world that often seemed chaotic. Even as he nears a century of life, Van Dyke's enduring legacy is not merely that of an entertainer, but a source of healing. Despite all the laughter he has brought, his own life has been marked by trials, including struggles with addiction, loneliness, and grief. Yet, through it all, he remains a symbol of resilience, joy, and the power of laughter. A childhood shaped by hardship. Dick Van Dyke's childhood wasn't filled with the warmth and laughter he would later become known for. Born in 1925 in Danville, Illinois, during the time of the Great Depression, his early years were defined by instability and emotional absence. His father, a traveling salesman, was often away, and his mother, a hard-working stenographer, was the family's primary provider. The silence at home wasn't peaceful, but rather the quiet absence of emotional connection. For a young Dick, this absence felt heavy. It shaped him, teaching him to hide his own pain behind a smile, using humor as a shield to protect himself and others from seeing the hurt he carried. As he later reflected, "I was always trying to make people laugh, maybe because I didn't want them to see how I really felt." The early struggles of a dreamer. Despite the challenges at home, Dick Van Dyke found solace in performing. As a shy, sensitive young boy, he initially sought refuge in choir and drama club. The stage offered him an escape, a place where he could be seen and heard, something he struggled to find in his personal life. For a time, Van Dyke even considered becoming a minister, driven by the desire to offer the compassion and comfort that he himself had longed for. However, even in this, he felt out of place, burdened by doubts about his own worth and ability. Yet these insecurities became the foundation of his craft, fueling the warmth and authenticity that would later define his career. His early struggles, though painful, would soon evolve into the source of his greatest strength, his ability to make others feel less alone. From radio DJ to national spotlight. In the late 1940s, Dick Van Dyke began his career as a radio DJ at WDN in his hometown. Though the job was modest, it offered him a chance to connect with an unseen audience, a place where his voice could reach others, even if he felt unheard. He later reflected, "It felt like maybe someone out there was listening." This small start was an early manifestation of his desire for connection, which would define his career. His next step was a mime comedy duo with Phil Erickson, performing in clubs under the name Eric and Van, the Merry Mutes. It was a humble beginning, filled with little recognition and plenty of obscurity, but Van Dyke's persistence never wavered. Even when success seemed distant, he kept showing up, believing that his time would come. Finding his place. Amidst rejection, Dick Van Dyke's early years in show business were marked by rejection and obscurity. Despite his best efforts, the road to success wasn't smooth. After being rejected by the military for being underweight, he was eventually given a job as a radio announcer and later entertained troops during the Korean War. The irony of being deemed too light to fly planes, yet finding his place in the military by lifting spirits through humor, was not lost on him. When the war ended, he returned to civilian life without any clear direction. He drifted from city to city, working at various local television stations, improvising segments, and struggling to make ends meet. These years, though difficult and filled with uncertainty, were the training ground for his later success. Van Dyke's belief in himself and his craft slowly built the foundation for his breakthrough. Hollywood's love affair with Van Dyke. Hollywood's love affair with Van Dyke. By 1964, Van Dyke's career was in full swing. He became a household name with his role as Bert the Chimney Sweep in Disney's Mary Poppins. His infectious energy and effortless charm made him an icon for families across the world. Yet even as the world celebrated his success, Van Dyke struggled with self-doubt. "I always worried they'd realize I wasn't as good as they thought," he admitted. Despite his popularity, he was often typecast in roles that emphasized his charm, but didn't allow him to stretch his acting range. In the late 1960s and 1970s, he sought more challenging roles in films like The Comic and Cold Turkey, but instead of earning respect, he was met with indifference. These years, which he later referred to as the forgotten chapter of his career, were frustrating for him as he grappled with the fear that he was more than just a pretty face and a dancer. Late career renaissance, diagnosis, murder, and a new generation. The 1990s brought a new chapter in Van Dyke's career when he took on the role of Dr. Mark Sloan in Diagnosis, Murder. At 65, he was able to prove to a new generation of viewers that he was more than just the lovable goofball of The Dick Van Dyke Show. The show ran for 8 successful seasons and introduced Van Dyke to an entirely new audience. By then, critics no longer questioned his talent, and his reputation as a generous, humble actor was well established. Despite the recognition and accolades, Van Dyke never took his fame for granted. He always placed a higher value on connection and the ability to make people laugh when they needed it the most. His greatest achievement, he often said, was not the awards or the recognition, but the ability to bring comfort to people through laughter. The hidden battles of a public life. Though Dick Van Dyke's career flourished, his personal life was filled with hidden struggles. His long-standing battle with alcohol addiction was a deeply private issue, one that only surfaced years later when he admitted to relying on alcohol to feel normal. "It got to where I needed it, just to feel normal," he confessed. His years of alcoholism, combined with the guilt of an affair that led to the dissolution of his first marriage, weighed heavily on him. But through his journey of recovery and self-discovery, Van Dyke found a path to healing. His struggles with addiction were a reminder that the most joyful faces often hide deep pain, and that resilience comes not from avoiding darkness, but from learning to navigate it. Love, loss, and the legacy of a survivor. The most difficult chapters of Dick Van Dyke's life came in his later years. In 2008, his first wife, Margie Willett, passed away from cancer. A year later, his partner of over 30 years, Michelle Triola, also succumbed to the disease. The pain of losing 2 women he had loved deeply was compounded by the death of his 13-year-old granddaughter, Jessica, in 2010. The grief was overwhelming, and in the face of such loss, Van Dyke found himself once again questioning the meaning of it all. But despite these heart-wrenching moments, he found a new source of peace with his second wife, Arlene Silver. Their love story, which began later in life, has defied conventional expectations and proven that love knows no age limits. Together, they share a quiet life in Malibu, where Van Dyke continues to live on his own terms, filled with gratitude for the life he has lived. The legacy of Dick Van Dyke, more than a smile. As he nears the century mark, Dick Van Dyke remains a symbol of resilience, laughter, and kindness. His legacy is not just in the roles he played or the awards he received, but in the way he made people feel. In a world where fame can often feel fleeting, Van Dyke's ability to remain grounded in love, joy, and human connection is what has made him a true legend. From his early struggles to his late career renaissance, Van Dyke's story is a testament to the power of persistence and the importance of laughter, even in the darkest of times. His greatest achievement is not just the joy he gave the world, but the quiet, enduring strength he demonstrated through his personal battles. As he continues to live life on his own terms, Dick Van Dyke remains a beacon of hope, reminding us all to dance while the music still plays.